Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, President Trump today perfecting his reciprocal tariffs plan. One day before what the White House calls one of the most important days in modern American history. What we know about the announcement tomorrow and how countries are planning to respond. Iris Tao at the White House. President Trump faces multiple legal challenges tied to illegal immigration. That's as the White House announces illegal crossings at the southwest border are at the lowest level in U.S. history. Arian Pozdar has the immigration update. 2 special elections in Florida will reshape the dynamics in Congress, with Democrats hoping to flip at least one seat blue. Luis Martinez has the latest in those races. The JFK assassination files released by the Trump administration have been out for 2 weeks now. A House task force looks into them for the first time, inviting experts for questions. Jason Blair with the key takeaways. And Israeli forces launch another airstrike on Beirut. And in another development, a mass grave is discovered in the Gaza Strip, reportedly containing the bodies of humanitarian aid workers. Jason Perry reports.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. The White House says President Trump was working with advisors today to perfect his reciprocal tariffs plan to be unveiled tomorrow. As stocks fluctuated on Tuesday, the administration seeks to ease concerns about market reactions. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Good evening, Iris. What is the latest we're hearing from the White House about the big day tomorrow?
Good evening to you, Tiff. So as President Trump is preparing to roll out his massive reciprocal tariffs tomorrow, which the White House has been billing as a significant day, the White House says today that President Trump is perfecting his specific tariff plans today with his advisors and that these tariffs are set to go into effect immediately. Watch.
To tomorrow, April 2nd, 2025, will go down as one of the most important days in modern American history. Tomorrow they will be effective immediately. The president will be addressing the decades of unfair trade practices that have ripped our country off and American workers off.
The Trump administration has said that these reciprocal tariffs will be matching other countries' tariffs to the U.S. in proportion, but the exact details remain unknown. President Trump, though, has said that he will be lenient and actually give some countries breaks. But, of course, the big announcement is still waiting to be unveiled tomorrow. Meanwhile, countries are still waiting to see what the exact announcement will be before they respond with specific actions. European countries, though, have vowed a strong plan to respond, and the leaders of Canada and Mexico also talked today planning how to respond, in which they agreed to increase trade between these two countries while noting challenging times ahead. The White House did say today, though, that President Trump would still be open to good negotiations, signaling possible space for more leeway. And meanwhile, markets and stocks today fluctuated amid uncertainty over what exactly the details will be tomorrow, but the White House brushed off concerns about potential market instability, saying this. Watch.
And I've said, and he has said, the market is a snapshot in time. Yesterday, Dow futures were up. The president wants to ensure that all Americans make out well. Just like they were in his first term, Wall Street will be just fine.
Meanwhile, tomorrow's announcement will come at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, which is right after markets close. And that announcement will take place at Rose Garden right here at the White House with full cabinet in attendance, along with some auto workers also there. Back to you.
And Iris, there are some Democratic lawmakers taking actions against Trump's tariffs. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So a group of Democratic lawmakers are trying to undo President Trump's just recently announced tariffs on Canadian goods. Here's what one of them said today. Watch.
Clear about that. Fentanyl is a real emergency. But as President Trump's national security advisor Tulsi Gabbard testified before Mark's Intel committee last week, the fentanyl emergency is from Mexico and China. It's not from Canada. She presented a
But President Trump today on Truth Social pushed back against such an attempt, saying that Democrats are trying to hold, quote, our critical tariffs on deadly fentanyl coming in from Canada, adding that Republicans in the Senate must vote to keep the national emergency in place so that we can, quote, finish the job. So a lot to unfold still when it comes to tariffs that President Trump has already put in place. Back to you.
All right, Iris, thanks for those updates. Republicans are hoping to add 2 more seats to their slim House majority after Tuesday's special elections in Florida. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on the story.
Comes to Florida, you have 2 races, and they seem to be good. It's a Trump plus 32 area. The one thing is they're spending like $12 million, and our candidate doesn't have that kind of money, spending much less than that, like maybe 1/12.
That was President Donald Trump referring to the special election in Florida's 6th district where Republican Randy Fine is facing off against Democratic contender Josh Weil. Randy Fine, a state senator and a Harvard alum, received President Trump's endorsement, which has been at the center of Democratic attack ads against him.
And the person running on the Republican side has shown no interest in attempting to reach out, communicate with the district, talk to people, or say that he'll serve them. He is adamant over and over again that he is going to serve only one person if he is elected, and that person doesn't live in District 6.
The latest polls show Republican Randy Fine just 4 points ahead of his Democratic opponent in a district that Trump won over by 30 points back in November 5th, and so did now National Security Advisor and then Congressman Mike Waltz. Republicans attribute this to fundraising and not a failure in campaign strategy.
It's because the president is winning on a daily basis. These donations are not from inside the district. They are from outside the district. It's probably going to end up being a 15-to-1 margin in CD6 with Randy Fine. And let me tell you, that Randy Fine is the Hebrew hammer. He's probably going to be the smartest guy in Congress, a double Harvard grad.
In Florida's 1st district, the seat left open by former Congressman Matt Gaetz, Democrats are also centering their campaign on President Trump. Early voting data shows that Republican turnout surpasses Democrats by over 20 points.
Oh, yeah, we are having, so we have 20,000 federal workers that work in our district. That's of the 90,000 in Florida. Because we're made up of active duty military bases, retired military vets, and retired civilians. So we are having lots of kickbacks from what's going on.
Republicans are expected to win both of Florida's special elections in hopes of expanding their majority from 218 seats to 220. Democrats currently hold 213 seats, and there's 2 vacancies previously held by Democrats. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
A House task force invites experts on the JFK assassination for questions related to recently released JFK files. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
The FBI and the CIA should not have the last word on JFK's murder. You should.
2 weeks after the release of 80,000 pages from the JFK assassination files, the House Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets looked into the tragic event.
The assassination of President John F. Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963 remains one of the most defining and haunting events in our nation's history.
Experts on the assassination were invited for questions. They all emphasized the importance of transparency.
Can we return to a world where we can trust our government to level with us, the people for which this government exists?
Secrecy is the enemy of democracy. It's the enemy of the Republican form of government. And an misinformed or uninformed public cannot make good decisions. And a compliant press helps cushion the public from that fact. When President Kennedy took office, 75% of the public believed in what the government was saying. By the 90s, it was down to 19%.
One witness focused on 3 CIA agents who he believes were complicit in the assassination.
We know now that Richard Helms, James Angleton, and George Joannides were responsible for or complicit in the death of the president, either by criminal negligence or covert action. My recommendations to the task force are: 1, secure and release the personnel file of George Joannides, and 2, ask the CIA to provide a public statement answering the question, Why did these three men lie to JFK investigators?
Mr. Morley thinks the answers will fulfill the committee's and the Trump administration's goal of full JFK disclosure. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
The White House says southwest border crossings are at the lowest level in American history. That says President Trump faces multiple legal challenges on illegal immigration. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the immigration update.
Southwest border crossings in March fell to the lowest level in American history, down 94% from March of last year.
White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt on Tuesday saying the administration keeps tackling illegal immigration. According to her, almost 140,000 immigrants entered the U.S. illegally in March of last year, a number that's much lower a year later. The Trump administration has been deporting alleged gang members to a maximum security prison in El Salvador. On Monday, the administration admitted that an administrative mistake resulted in a Salvadoran man's deportation and imprisonment. That's despite the fact that a judge had granted him legal protection from deportation. On Tuesday, Leavitt said that the individual was a member of the MS-13 gang.
We also have credible intelligence proving that this individual was involved in human trafficking. And fact number 3, this individual was a member, actually a leader of the brutal MS-13 gang, which this president has designated as a foreign terrorist organization. Fact number 4 is that foreign terrorists do not have legal protections in the United States of America anymore.
This comes as top Democrats are suing President Trump over a recent executive order. Trump's action aims to enforce the law against illegal immigrant voting and election dates. The lawsuit alleges that the executive order seeks to impose radical changes on how Americans register to vote, cast a ballot, and participate in our democracy, all of which threaten to disenfranchise lawful voters and none of which is legal. The suit was filed by the Democratic National Committee, Senator Chuck Schumer, and Representative Hakeem Jeffries. They want the court to declare that the order violates the Constitution and block officials from implementing it. And in other immigration-related news, attorneys general from 26 states are asking the Supreme Court to allow President Trump to keep deporting alleged gang members. Trump used the Alien Enemies Act to deport alleged members of the Trendy Aragua gang. A federal judge recently blocked Trump's ability to implement the law. The president then asked the Supreme Court to overturn that ruling and allow him to use the law for deportations. The High Court might make a decision in the case on Tuesday. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
Ukraine and the U.S. are hashing out the details of a minerals deal. Ukraine's foreign minister gave an update on the progress of the negotiations today. Ukraine's foreign minister also commented on a supposed ceasefire with Russia on energy facilities. He accused Russia of continuing to strike such targets. A senior Russian diplomat said Moscow cannot accept U.S. proposals to end the war in Ukraine in their current form. Trump in recent days has threatened sanctions against countries that buy Russian oil if he feels Moscow is stalling. Israeli forces have launched another airstrike on Lebanon's capital, killing a senior Hezbollah terrorist. And in another development, 15 alleged humanitarian aid workers were recently killed and buried in a large grave in the Gaza Strip. NTD's Jason Perry has the story and a warning. This report contains footage that some viewers may find disturbing.
In the early hours of Tuesday morning, residents in Lebanon were awakened by another Israeli airstrike in Beirut. Israeli forces say they struck and killed a senior member of the Hezbollah terrorist group who was planning and advancing an imminent terrorist attack against Israeli civilians, and that Israeli forces killed him due to the immediacy of the threat. A resident who lives nearby shared his thoughts.
We were at home at 3 a.m. We were sleeping. We hear a woo sound and a powerful strike hit. My daughters jumped and asked me what was going on. I told them, "Don't be afraid, it is a sonic boom." You can't tell a child that these are strikes.
A spokesman for Hezbollah says the terrorist group does not want war, but it will deter Israeli aggression if necessary. And in another development, a large grave site was recently excavated in the Gaza Strip. A UN official gave an update on the scene.
We're here today digging up a mass grave of first responders and paramedics. 7 days ago, civil defense and PRCS ambulances arrived at the scene. One by one, they were hit, they were struck. Their bodies were gathered and buried in this mass grave. We're digging them out in their uniforms, with their gloves on.
On Tuesday, Israel's foreign minister said Israel did not randomly attack an ambulance. He said several uncoordinated vehicles were advancing suspiciously toward Israeli troops without headlights or emergency signals, at which point Israeli troops opened fire on them.
Following an initial assessment, it was determined that the forces had eliminated a Hamas military terrorist, Mohammed Amin Ibrahim Shubaki, who took part in the October 7 massacre, along with 8 other terrorists from Hamas and the Islamic Jihad.
Meanwhile, Israel's blockade on the Gaza Strip has been going on for almost a month now. Residents were seen gathering food from a UN distribution center. One woman shared her thoughts as she cooked bread for her family.
I do what I am capable of. With all our efforts and tiredness, we can't even get water. Things are getting worse. We don't know where the end is taking us. May God help us all.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel would not allow food into the territory until all the remaining hostages are released. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Coming up, the State Department honors courageous women from across the globe, some of them sacrificing their safety in life-threatening situations to help others. Jack Bradley reports. Taiwan calls China a troublemaker as the Chinese Communist regime conducts attack drills around the democratic island. And search efforts continue after a devastating earthquake in Burma, also known as Myanmar. A Chinese company heavily involved in the controversial Belt and Road Initiative is in the spotlight. It's the majority shareholder behind the only high-rise in Thailand to collapse from last week's earthquake. More on that after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Myers, celebrating women leaders around the world for their courage and sacrifices in standing up for human rights. The State Department honored 8 women today at the 19th Annual International Women of Courage Award ceremony. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more.
Today, we celebrate courage, a strength that is based in love.
First Lady Melania Trump alongside Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Tuesday, honoring 8 women from across the globe for their bravery. It's the annual International Women of Courage Award ceremony held at the State Department. Each of the awardees has worked to end human trafficking, preserve the natural environment, or help those in dire situations.
And what we recognize are more than that is not just their work, but the fact that they do so oftentimes at extraordinary risk to themselves, to their families, to their loved ones.
The annual award was established by former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice in 2007. Since then, over 200 women have received this International Women of Courage Award. The First Lady singled out Georgiana Pascu from Romania, who rescues children and adults with disabilities from harmful and sometimes captive environments.
Georgiana usually shows up unannounced and discovers the unimaginable. Helpless adults and children bound, sedated, starving, and in extreme cases dying.
Another one of the women honored and the only awardee to speak at the event was Amit Susanna. She was abducted by Hamas terrorists during the October 7th attack on Israel. She was held captive for nearly 2 months and subject to sexual violence.
55 days of fear, of pain, and of being stripped of every freedom I once took for granted.
Susanna continues to call for the release of the remaining hostages while thanking President Trump for his work to free them.
The hostages cannot wait. Every single day that passes is another day of unimaginable suffering.
Many of these awardees regularly risk their lives for the sake of helping others. And this award exemplifies that, recognizing and encouraging bravery and leadership in the face of adversity. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
China began joint Army, Navy, and rocket force exercises around Taiwan today. The communist nation called the move a stern warning against separatism. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports on the military drills.
China's military deployed ships, aircraft, and artillery on Tuesday. It says to practice blockading Taiwan, striking ground and maritime targets, and air interception. The communist nation's military released a series of propaganda videos in quick succession as it announced the drills. A video of a poster accompanying the drills titled "Closing In" showed Chinese forces surrounding the island. This was followed by a video titled "Shell," depicting Taiwanese President Lai as a green cartoon bug, spawning parasites across the island. China's state broadcaster, CCTV, showed footage of the country's People's Liberation Army launching fighter jets and other planes from a base as Chinese war vessels were seen sailing at sea. China's Coast Guard said it was simulating inspection and capture, interception and detention operations against unwarranted vessels. It says it is showing what it called its legitimate jurisdiction over the democratic nation of Taiwan. Taiwan's defense ministry on Tuesday said it had not detected any live fire by the Chinese military, but that at least 71 Chinese military aircraft and 13 Navy ships were involved. The defense minister criticized China, saying the communist nation is damaging the peace and stability of the region.
It is obviously that China is a very obvious troublemaker. There have been a lot of reports related to corruption problems within the People's Liberation Army. I think they should properly resolve these internal problems instead of destroying peace and stability in the region.
China's military has undergone a sweeping anti-corruption purge over the past few years. Taiwan's presidential office on Tuesday condemned China's drills.
In the face of external threats, our government will continue to defend the democratic and free constitutional system. We have the confidence and the capability to defend our sovereignty rights, protecting the safety of the people and maintaining social stability.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth recently wrapped up his first trip to Asia. Hegseth addressed CCP aggression on Sunday in Japan, saying that America first does not mean America alone.
America and Japan stand firmly together in the face of aggressive and coercive actions by the Communist Chinese.
Hegseth says the alliance between Japan and the U.S. has never been stronger.
And Japan is our indispensable partner in deterring Communist Chinese military aggression.
Japan hosts around 50,000 U.S. military personnel, fighter squadrons, and an aircraft carrier strike group that helped to hem in Chinese military power. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The death toll from the earthquake in Burma, also known as Myanmar, is expected to surpass 3,000. The country's government added that more than 4,000 were injured and more than 400 missing. NTD's Andrew Thomas has an update on the natural disaster and its aftermath.
Friday's 7.7 magnitude quake has left Burma reeling. The leader of the governing military junta blamed the deaths and injuries on the structure of impacted buildings.
When I visited the damaged areas, I saw mistakes in the engineering methods used for their construction. Some buildings were carelessly built without proper measurements. Some buildings were built cheaply, without spending enough money on them. I mean, the concrete buildings. When the buildings were constructed without consideration of impact of earthquake, the loss was huge when the earthquake emerged.
The recent earthquake marks the strongest tremor to hit the Southeast Asian country in more than a century. Video filmed by a teenage girl on Saturday in Mandalay showed a group trapped under the rubble.
Hello? Somebody there? We are stuck here. Please help us. I beg you, please, pull us out.
The teenagers and their grandmother were later rescued. Video footage captured an overcrowded hospital in Mandalay as injured victims lay, awaiting medical treatment. Another video showed a triage tent set up in an open area outside the hospital. Across Burma's border with Thailand, search and rescue operations continued at a collapsed building site in Bangkok. 74 people remain missing.
We will remain in operation until we are officially ordered to stand down. Deep down, our team still believes there are victims waiting to be found. We will stay until the mission ends.
But time is running out. Without water, people trapped beneath the rubble have an average survival time of about 3 days. With water, survivors have a better shot. After the 2011 earthquake and tsunami in Japan, a teenager and his 80-year-old grandmother were found alive after being trapped for 9 days. In 2010, a 16-year-old Haitian girl was rescued in Port-au-Prince after 15 days. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
The Thai government is conducting a probe of a 33-story building that collapsed during the earthquake. At least 18 workers are confirmed dead and dozens missing. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports on the investigation into the building, which was a joint Thai-Chinese construction project.
Some glass windows installed as cladding on the building could be seen falling off as the entire structure collapsed within seconds. The building was the only high-rise in Thailand to collapse from the March 28th quake. Thai Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra says the government has ordered an investigation into what caused the structural failure of the high-rise. How the unique core tube plus flat slab design of the structure was approved will also be investigated. Local Thai media reported that China Railway Engineering Corporation, or CREC, is the largest shareholder in the $63 million joint Chinese-Thai venture. CREC is heavily involved in China's controversial Belt and Road Initiative. Nations involved in other Belt and Road projects have warned of unsustainable debts incurred as a result of the projects. Many analysts call them a debt trap, which doesn't deliver the advertised economic growth, but instead results in national security risks for host countries. Thai officials on Monday said they were investigating metal and steel parts taken from the quake-hit construction site in Bangkok. An anti-corruption watchdog had flagged irregularities in the construction of the skyscraper. A government official said Monday that signs of life were detected at the site.
A second ago, we actually found one of the signals. And this is why we're trying to cooperate together so that we concentrate on the technical team, how we're going to get through to the signal that we actually capture.
Thai senators kept a set of personal protection equipment next to each of their seats in the country's parliament on Monday for their first parliamentary session since the earthquake. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Coming up, Department of Government Efficiency head Elon Musk has become a central figure in today's Wisconsin Supreme Court election, and the issue of alleged Social Security fraud is in the spotlight. But can DOGE change how the Social Security Administration functions? A professor of economics joins us to discuss. And New York City Comptroller Brad Lander holds a press conference today urging the city's law department to sue Musk, who's also the CEO of Tesla. Arlene Richards brings us the details after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Ahead of today's high-stakes Wisconsin Supreme Court election, political action committees linked to Tesla CEO Elon Musk have donated $14 million to Republican-backed candidate Brad Schimmel. Musk has become a central figure in this race, which he says could have significant implications for next year's midterm elections. Musk reportedly said at a recent event for Wyoming voters that a scammer stole 400,000 Social Security numbers and personal information from the Social Security database, and that this person may be arrested soon. Musk also said DOGE has found through its audits that the Social Security database included 20 million dead people marked as alive. Joining us now to discuss DOGE and how it might impact Social Security is David C. Rose, Senior Research Fellow with a PhD in Economics at the American Institute for Economic Research. He's also an Emeritus Professor of Economics at the University of Missouri St. Louis. David, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you. Now, I want to start with what Musk is telling Wisconsin voters, that 400,000 Social Security numbers have been stolen. Now, this is part of his DOGE hunt for waste across government agencies. What do you make of what Musk is saying here? Is mass fraud the only way to read this situation?
It is. It also is a case of where what the fraud might not be what you expect it to be. In other words, the fraud, we normally think of it just in terms of money, but one of the things that his most recent report suggests is that people who are non-citizens are getting Social Security numbers, not so much to get benefits, although some would, of course, but also because it's not illegal necessarily to get a Social Security number if you're a non-citizen. But if you do have a Social Security number as a non-citizen, in some states, it's going to be much easier to be able to vote. And so that explains why non-citizens jumped from about 230,000 in 2021 getting Social Security numbers to over 2.1 million in 2024. That's a gigantic increase. And I have to agree that is rather suspicious if that number does hold up.
I want to dig into this because you have a recent piece out, and in it you mentioned how the real number of those who are over 100 and receiving benefits is around 44,000 instead of the millions that Musk has mentioned before. How likely do you think we'll see the work Doge is doing translating into, say, actual legislation or reform by Congress or the president down the road?
That's a great question. And it points to one of the big problems that we have in our nation right now, which is a lack of trust that normally we had in the past. I mean, people are unwilling to just presume that whatever the Doge team finds is true. And other people are willing to accept it at face value. And we don't really know who to ask to verify these things. Right now, it seems that the pattern for Doge has been to find certain kinds of alarming results, to report them quickly, and then have to back off a little bit. I think they are trying harder to avoid that. It has hurt their credibility in the past, but it would behoove them to try as hard as possible to get these numbers right the first time, because we do need to reform Social Security. And it's unlikely that, finding waste and fraud through what Doge is doing is going to be enough to solve all our problems in Social Security. But it makes sense to reduce the scale of the problem as much as possible through waste and fraud that we can't discover. So it's an important thing that they're doing, but it's not clear to me yet that we've worked out all the bugs on getting these numbers right.
And when it comes to cutting government waste, you mentioned the term entitlement reform to, say, eliminate the budget deficit. Talk to us about that. What does entitlement reform look like?
Well, entitlement reform, particularly for Social Security, can take many different avenues. And one of the problems that we have with Social Security reform is that Social Security, there are so many ways to improve it and so many ways to reform it that we have competing improvement plans, and therefore we can't get a great deal of support for any particular plan. In one way to address the issue, which has been done in the past 20 times no less, is to simply increase the payroll tax rate. That's been done in the past. That can be done again. Increasing the retirement age can be done. But I think that the two simplest ways to reform Social Security in order to produce real benefits to future generations is to stop indexing the initial computation of benefits using wage data and to use consumer price data instead. In other words, a consumer price index to do that initial calculation. It's kind of a technical thing, but it's something that can be done fairly easily. The other thing is to use what's known as a chain-weighted consumer price index on the back end. In other words, most people realize that Social Security benefit checks are adjusted for inflation after a person starts getting those checks. But if we just use the simple consumer price index, it tends to overstate the increase in cost of living. A chain-weighted approach gets rid of that. If we did those two things, just those two things, we would eliminate virtually all of the unfunded liability gap over the next 75 years. That would be huge progress, and it would not involve any pain or unfairness whatsoever to anyone.
Quite remarkable indeed what you just mentioned there. David Rose, thank you so much for joining us. New York City Comptroller Brad Lander today asked the city to sue Elon Musk. He says Musk isn't doing his job as CEO of Tesla, and it's caused the city's pension fund to lose over $300 million in value in less than 3 months. NTD's legal correspondent Arlene Richards has more.
Today, I am here to say enough is enough. It is time to sue Tesla.
New York City Comptroller Brad Lander is calling out Tesla CEO Elon Musk. He says Musk isn't doing his job and the company's stocks are suffering. And so are the city's more than 3 million shares. At a press conference on Tuesday, he urged the city's law department to file a lawsuit.
And so I've sent a letter to Corporation Counsel Muriel Good-Trufant, the head of the New York City Law Department. It's the Law Department's responsibility to represent the pension funds in securities litigation or to bring in outside firms to do so. And I'm calling on them to pursue securities litigation on behalf of the 5 New York City pension funds.
He said in less than 3 months, Tesla stock has lost nearly 40% of its value. And that caused the value of the city's pension fund to fall by over $300 million. Lander blames the loss on Musk. He said since the billionaire began working with President Trump, Tesla shareholders have suffered significant losses. And he thinks Musk is working as a part-time CEO.
I believe that the outcome of securities litigation will be preferable to divestment because we can recover the losses that we've experienced and force the governance changes that Tesla has long needed to get an independent board of directors and to get a full-time CEO.
Lander said Tesla has claimed that Musk spends significant time on the company and is highly active in its management, despite working for the administration. In a Fox Business interview, Musk acknowledged that Tesla stock was way down and that he's facing a lot of criticism for working on government efficiency.
Yeah, it is tough sledding. But I think we're doing the right thing here. There's been a tremendous amount of waste and fraud in the government.
Lander is asking the city's law department to file a shareholder lawsuit against Tesla for material misrepresentations about the leadership of the company. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The Department of Justice is seeking the death penalty for Luigi Mangione, the man accused of shooting and killing United Health Group Chief Executive Brian Thompson in New York last year. That's according to U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi. Lawyers for Mangione did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Mangione pleaded not guilty to New York State charges of murder as an act of terrorism and weapons offenses. He could face life in prison without parole if convicted in that case. New York does not have the death penalty for state charges. Mangione faces a parallel federal indictment over Thompson's killing. He could face the death penalty if convicted in that case. He has not yet been asked to enter a plea to the federal charges. Coming up, California lawmakers have voted down 2 proposals that would have banned transgender athletes from participating in girls' and women's sports. The decision comes after heated debate on both sides. Christina Corona brings us more from the West Coast. And in golf news, Tiger Woods gives an update on his recent surgery that seems too good to be true. Dave Martin joins us to discuss. And in the high-elevation state of Colorado, Shin Yun gave the performance of a lifetime. One audience member said she was thrilled and smiling during the performance. That and more after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. California lawmakers debated 2 bills today on the participation of transgender students in girls' and women's sports. NTD's Christina Corona has more.
California lawmakers blocked 2 bills today, AB 89 and AB 844, which would have banned transgender kids and teens from joining sports teams aligned with their gender identity and require individuals to use facilities based on their sex. In a 2-7 vote, lawmakers rejected AB 89, a bill that would have banned male students from playing on girls' school sports teams. Assemblymember Kate Sanchez, who introduced the bill, said it was about fairness.
It is not about hate. It is not about fear, and it's not right-wing talking points. This is entirely about fairness, safety, and integrity in girls' competitive high school athletics. That's it. In North Carolina, a 17-year-old girl was knocked unconscious by a spike from a biological male athlete on the opposing volleyball team. In Massachusetts, girls were physically injured during a basketball game, forcing the team to forfeit. Opponents of the bill argue that it infringes on rights.
I'm not going to support a bill that takes rights away from a protected class of people. Gender identity is a protected class here in California, just like race, sex, and age, and it's been a protected class for more than a decade. I'm not going to turn my back on that. I'm not going to sanction discrimination against LGBTQ Californians.
Lawmakers also blocked AB 844, which would have reversed a 2013 law that allows students to participate in sports and use facilities like bathrooms, locker rooms, and housing at colleges based on their gender identity.
You must keep men out of women's sports and out of their facilities for the simple reason that they are men. Men are not women. A man who claims he is a woman is still not a woman. So why shouldn't men play in women's sports? Because they aren't women. It isn't true. We should not allow men into women's sports for the same reason we shouldn't go around claiming that 2 + 2 = 7. It's just not true. It is a lie.
I do see this bill, AB 844, as an opportunity to invade individuals' right to privacy, to run afoul of some of our non-discrimination laws in the state, and really, and importantly, it would decimate some of the public safety and well-being of all women.
The debate comes after Governor Gavin Newsom said on his podcast that it's unfair for transgender athletes to compete in girls' sports. He hasn't called for a change in state law. Reporting from the city of El Monte, Christina Corona, NTD News.
And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, a lot going on today, but let's start in the NFL as a vote to ban the so-called Tush push play has been tabled for the time being. What is the issue here?
Actually, it seems like there's several issues here. Now, Rich McKay, who's the chairman of the competition committee, said that health and safety was only part of the conversation. On the one side, medical experts are saying this is not a very safe play, but on the other side, they're saying there's really no data that proves that it is. So McKay also talked about how this looks like more of like a rugby play rather than a traditional football play. So there's also a discussion of how they want their football games to actually play out. Now, for the longest time, pushing your own teammate who has the ball was outlawed by the league. That was mainly because referees had trouble telling once a play got downfield what was actually going on. So they rescinded that rule in 2004, but it wasn't until the last couple of years that teams actually started making a play out of it by just pushing your quarterback into the line as soon as he hikes the ball. But really, it's only the Eagles and the Bills that were the main two teams that do this all the time. And the Eagles are, of course, very successful. They won the Super Bowl. Anyway, it's not over yet. They haven't voted on it yet, but ESPN is reporting 16 out of 32 teams are for and 16 against. So for the time, it is tabled.
Well, elsewhere in the game, Pittsburgh Steelers owner Art Rooney II said he feels good about the possibility of Aaron Rodgers signing with them. What kind of timetable is there for this to happen?
I would think for Rodgers, at least by the beginning of training camp in July, he's going to want to find a team because he's going to go to a new offense for sure, and he's going to have new receivers to throw to. It takes time to build up that rapport. Now, for the Steelers, I would think they'd want to know by the NFL draft, which is just later this month, whether he's going to be a part of their team or not, because that would impact, who they take probably in the first round. They take, Jackson Dart of Ole Miss or something like that. So they need to know that soon. Now, all that said, it doesn't seem like there's really any other team out there that's really still available for Rodgers to sign. Maybe there's rumors in Minnesota, but it really seems like it's Pittsburgh or nobody for Rodgers at this point.
Well, looking at tonight's sports schedule, Alex Ovechkin continues his pursuit of Wayne Gretzky's record against Boston. Plus, the Yankees break out their torpedo bats again tonight against Arizona.
Yeah, this torpedo bats has dominated the conversation for the first few days of the baseball season. Ellie De La Cruz, he's a shortstop for Cincinnati, broke it out last night. It was the first time he used it. He ended up hitting 2 home runs in the game. Now, according to Yahoo Sports, he's one of 16 players over 10 different teams using these bats. And there's a number of players who stated they're soon going to be using them as well. Now, I mentioned yesterday, Aaron Judge leads the majors in home runs and RBIs. He does not use the torpedo bat. Also, Mets All-Star shortstop Francisco Lindor is 0 for 11 to start the season. Pictures show, or at least he seems to suggest, that he is using the torpedo bat, so you never really know. Anyway, Yankees play Diamondbacks 7 p.m. Eastern, and as you mentioned, Alex Ovechkin continues his pursuit of Wayne Gretzky tonight at 7 p.m. also. He needs 5 more to pass Gretzky.
I guess very soon we'll know. But switching gears to golf, Tiger Woods, who recently announced he had undergone surgery to repair a ruptured Achilles tendon, had a surprising update today. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Woods sent out a tweet this morning that, let's go ahead and show that. The tweet this morning said, quote, "I can't believe I am saying this, but a few weeks after rupturing my left Achilles, the sleeping in a hyperbaric chamber plus the explosive lifts, my doctors and trainers have me ready to play the Masters next week. Can't wait. See y'all on the course." But 6 minutes later, after he sends that out, he sends out another tweet saying, "P.S. April Fools, my Achilles is still a mess. So for those of us who fell for it for about 6 minutes, we were pretty disappointed to find out that he will not be playing in the Masters next week. Who knows? I mean, it normally takes months to come back from an Achilles tear, so that's why it was so surprising. So we definitely, at least we know he won't be playing in the Masters, because that was up for us to decide. He hadn't actually said yet, so April Fool's on us.
Well, a roller coaster of emotions right there. Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tiff.
And Shenyun just finished performances in Colorado's Olympic City, leaving heartfelt impressions on theatergoers. Let's hear more from the people of Colorado Springs. NTD is a proud media sponsor of Shenyun.
Shenyun, the classical Chinese dance and music company, wrapped up 3 shows in the Olympic City of Colorado Springs in Colorado from March 28th to the 30th.
Oh my gosh, it's very thrilling. Seeing all of the costume changes and the acrobatics, like I can say, like, I'm finding it very thrilling. Like, there are times where I'm like, oh, I wasn't expecting that.
It is awesome. The beauty, the movement, just the professionalism, the stories. So I have been quite impressed, quite impressed.
Very positive. Beautiful artwork, beautiful choreography. The exposure to culture through what has happened here today is just wonderful.
Based in New York, Shenyun's mission is to revive genuine traditional culture through art and music, touching the hearts of many.
The expressions are deeply heartfelt. The music is deeply heartfelt. They do a beautiful job of just portraying the culture.
Having the spiritual component, that's the part that I would say is touching my heart the most.
Ancient Chinese culture was also divinely inspired, an aspect that audience members resonated with.
The pageantry of the movement, think about how God has made us to enjoy this life. So all of it coming together, I've just been very, very happy and excited to see it.
I think it's very important for them to come and experience something like what we saw today, because I think it provides insight to a lot of the struggle that's out there right now in China. And what you see here today is a tradition that is being expressed that is worthwhile seeing.
I felt full of hope and encouraged. It's wonderful to know that across denominational differences that there are ways to express hope and faith and encouragement.
It's very inspiring. I'm literally sitting there with this little grin on my face, just watching the whole thing unfold.
NTD News, Colorado Springs, Colorado.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.